Hi, we are here with Dr. Richard Kimball, author of the second chapter of the History of American College Football from our Intercollegiate Athletics course. This chapter is titled As Good as the Best, Gallaudet Football and the Battle Against Formalization at the Turn of the 20th Century.
Awesome. So our first question for you pretty much is just why you chose this topic for your research.
Actually, it wasn't even my idea. I teach a sports history and American culture class. And one of the students who had a longstanding interest in deaf history wrote a brief paper on football at Gallaudet. That caught my interest. It was a great paper. She didn't want to pursue it any further. And so it was something that I actually picked up from a student and then did, well, a whole lot of other work on it, but it sort of worked. I don't know if that's the opposite way it's supposed to work, but it worked out anyway.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, this was my first choice of a chapter to read just because I knew nothing about the topic beforehand, which is what had me so intrigued.
This was my absolute introduction to the history of the deaf, particularly. I had read some, and I was certainly aware of the history of disability as it related to sports, but it's still really thin. And so I am a complete outsider.
That's interesting. I chose this topic because with my undergrad, I actually studied ASL for my 3 years, and I was gonna do a little like, nice to meet you.
I would have been able to do nothing back. Maybe.
Yes, so we were just gauging your interest. So that's a really interesting topic. Just getting into deaf ed and deaf culture from like a whimsical from a student. That's pretty interesting.
For sure. And when I was writing my paper on the chapter, the angle that I went about it was kind of the toxic masculinity piece when it comes to just football in general. But then as I was reading a lot more into the chapter, how the equality for deaf athletes really seemed to be viewed through the lens of toxic masculinity, and like being able to put up with the violent hits, really be out there playing. And it just really resonated a lot with me from that angle. So I was curious about your perspectives of toxic masculinity within deaf athletics.
Yeah, it's hard for me to separate, those sorts of questions in, deaf sports, let's say particularly football, than from football writ large. I mean, I think that is an ongoing problem, has been from the very beginning, but I don't know that the deaf experience is particularly insightful. Did you find it that way?
I think so. The angle that I kind of went from was initially just in terms of toxic masculinity being very housed within American football, and a lot of through reading like the quotes and the writing, it was just like the violent aspect and being able to compete with hearing teams and take the hits, play the violent play was how they viewed themselves as equal to the hearing athletes.
And in some way, I don't know, I'm just guessing here, but that I mean, from a slightly different perspective, it might be, it's less sort of toxic masculinity, but using toxic masculinity, I suppose, as a tool to fight against discrimination, which I think is interesting in this case as a group.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Really proving themselves and catching up and saying we can do just as good as you can, if not better, like a slight advantage from not being able to, like the reusing of the huddle, like sign in there, you have an upper hand on the ones calling out plays. So it was extremely interesting to read on. One of my favorite parts actually was about football being prohibited.
I think that really showed how important football was to them. That if this is the punishment, I mean, this is such a severe punishment for I mean, sure, it was a prank. They deserve probably some punishment, but the outsized response that the prohibition of football got, I thought was pretty remarkable.
Absolutely. And not only you could see the effects with the budget that provides money for the other teams, and there was repercussions like that dance being taken away. It was just really how much football really centralized campus and got everyone involved, to see your classmates being, just like it says, as good as the best and representing that institution and that population as a whole.
Yeah, already football was the center, sort of the heart of campus.
Yeah, another aspect on that I found funny was like not even kicking a football in the quad. Like not only organized gameplay, but like none, you can't even play with your roommates.
And clearly the administration was trying to send a message, right? When it comes to that was pretty specific.
Do you think that was harped on because the brutality of football at the time? They were trying to use that as a scapegoat to trying to ease in some of the hardships that come along with it?
I think that probably rather than the brutality, and they certainly knew about it, they talked about it, they were concerned about it at the time, right? I mean, there are all kinds of schools prohibiting football because of its brutal nature and sort of the mass plays and deaths and injuries. I think in this case, rather than the brutality of it, they were focusing on the popularity of it. They saw that, they understood that this is where we can really penalize, to use a football word, I suppose, the student population is through football. That's what they really care about. And so by getting rid of it, even for a little while, it kind of hit the students where they lived. It hit the athletic association, right? But when you talked about because of the income generated by the football team, and it was the wedge that they had. It was the lever that they had in order to try to get the students to confess.
They called them barbarians and feared that they were being punished and wasn't necessarily rationalized. So it's definitely interesting how big of an impact that was on the student population.
And I think especially that use of the term barbarians was important because of, the way that the deaf had been associated earlier by, Charles Darwin and Alexander Graham Bell. And so by playing this new scientific sport that's bringing you into, sort of ushering in the 20th century, to go back and to lose that status, I thought that the use of that word was kind of key.
Yes, I agree. So I was wondering, do you have any information on where football at Gallaudet stands today?
Yeah, well, it endured sort of fits and starts throughout the 20th century. Sometimes they played intercollegiately, other times it was a club sport, sort of depended on the era. And I'm guessing, I don't know for sure, and the funding proposition as well. So Gallaudet still has a football team. They play in the football the championship subdivision.
Yeah.
And they have middling success. A few years ago, they had some great success and made the playoffs for the first time. But usually they're sort of in the middle of the pack, it seems.
Yeah. I was wondering if the culture of football being so integral on that campus, has that passion stayed around? You don't think that went away at all?
To be honest, I'm not sure. I don't know where. I know in terms of coverage of the Gallaudet football team, sort of by the national press or by the Washington Post, but it doesn't speak really to where it is, how central it is to campus life today.
Looking at your purpose and doing this research, what do you want for readers of your chapter to take away after reading it?
I think it adds an element to sports history that isn't widely covered. I think that to see it, the deaf have been so underserved by historians. I think there's some very good histories of the deaf, but not very much on sports. And so I think it adds to American history and sports history. But I also think that there's still discrimination against the deaf today, and maybe this helps to show, by showing some deaf history and positioning it inside of a still very popular American sport, that it gives us a new perspective on deaf history.
Well, thank you for taking the time to speak with us. That is all of the questions that we have for you.
Well, it's been my pleasure. Thank you.